Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of Breakthroughs with Bre. On this podcast, we will be having breakthroughs about our self growth, our self healing, our spiritual awakening journeys, all in pursuit of living our most authentic, free, and joyous lives. I'm Bre. I'm an Akashic Records channeler, I'm an astrologer, energy healer, and psychic. And today we will be having breakthroughs on radical self responsibility. What is it? Why is it the key to unlocking our personal power, our personal confidence? And as the Ascended Masters and Angels said yesterday when I was channeling about this message, why it is the key to our personal authority. Reminder, I will have timestamps for each segment of this episode in the show description, so you are welcome to navigate that episode as you please. Let's get into it. So today, our co-host is none other than my best friend, Shannon. I'm so excited to have her here today for episode 2. Shannon, I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So, hi, everyone. I'm Shannon, and I couldn't think of a better title than being Bre's best friend. So I will happily take that. A little bit about myself. I do internal communications for a tech company. That's my, day-to-day. But some more interesting things about me. I am a Cancer sun, keep me honest, Bre, Gemini rising, and Libra moon, right? Okay.
Got it.
Yes.
Aced it.
Yes. Boom. And then my aura colors, we know at least the confirmed part by Mystic Michaela is purple. You and I, we have theories about the other colors. It might be like a red, maybe a yellow. We're not super sure. So
yeah, she did. And her quick confirm she did. The red was a red rose, which threw us off. We're like, does this mean red aura? But
like the more we've her being nice, like here's a flower for you. Or...
Yeah, I feel like it was probably that it's red because the more I think about it, the more red feels like it fits for you,
Yeah,
but like there's also a lot about like yellow that resonates. So anyway, probably red, purple, maybe some yellow in the mix. I 100% agree. Sorry, please continue.
No, that's important. See, this is good. This is why you're here. You're keeping me honest. It's great. And then let's see. So some other personality types. I am an ENFJ for the Myers-Briggs. And then I took the Enneagram a long time ago. Like, let's see what this year was. This was 2014. So I don't know how accurate this is.
Almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, almost 10 years ago. So do with that what you will. But my highest scores were a type 3, a type 5, and a type 6. But that was me like 10 years ago. So I don't know.
And honestly, the most important question of them all, do you know your Hogwarts house?
Oh, yeah. Ravenclaw. That's very important. I love it. Yes. Ravenclaw.
Oh, that's so funny.
Some bits about me. Yeah, I actually have a Ravenclaw mug. I should go grab it. But
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I said on the first episode, I'm a proud Hufflepuff. I claim it. You would have
you were rocking that Spirit jersey last weekend.
100%. Best part about living in LA is being close to the Harry Potter world. Yes, I've gone multiple times. I'm unashamed of this. So Shannon obviously is on because we're very good friends, and I just knew she would bring the energy for us today for episode 2. Shannon, I'll let you start by telling a little bit about like how long we've known each other, about like how you might describe our friendship or whatever, just so people can get a sense of what we got going on here.
Yeah, so we actually visited each other last weekend, and we were reflecting on this, and we had a moment thinking, oh my gosh, it's been 10 years, or I guess it'll be 10 years in the fall. Which is wild. It feels like it went by like that. So it's pretty wild to reflect on that. We got our start in a sorority together, and we just clicked. I mean, it was instant, and we've been so close throughout the years. I feel like we've always had each other to go to. I think I'm a better person from friends with you. I mean, I'm so glad you're doing this because I think everybody can benefit from like your thoughts and your insight on things. So yeah, it's been a long time, almost a full decade. Crazy.
Amazing. Simply amazing. I think what's really nice is I feel like we've both gone through just the natural phases of growth in life.
Yeah.
And,
agreed.
There might have been phases where maybe like we weren't as close as we are now, but we were still good friends, and I think probably a lot of people can relate to those friendships where it kind of like withstands seasons and has enough like pliability to sort of bend with life.
Exactly.
And I feel really grateful that, that we're still so close, because friendships don't just like stay close without any reason.
You got to put the work in,
100%. And I feel very grateful obviously for, all of the wonderful things you bring into my life, but also like the effort and the investment that you make into our friendship to kind of match how I feel too. And I think that also comes with this feeling like we're very aligned and we feel very supported by each other, with each other. And, so like it feels natural. It feels like a positive addition to our lives, but
Totally.
like friendships that are able to be this close and last this long, again, they don't like happen,
Yeah. It's no accident, right? It's no
No.
accident. We ended up paired up that day. It's no accident we're as
Mm-hmm.
close as we are now. Like, I think to your point, it was aligning with, the paths we were supposed to be on, but then to give us credit, like our own investment in it as well,
Totally.
So,
Which I think,
yeah.
is really the recipe of life. So I love that for us.
Agreed.
Okay, so that is a little bit about Shannon. Honestly, I'm sure we're going to have her on for more episodes in the future. So if there's more you'd like to know about Shannon or about our friendship or whatever, let us know, because when she comes back on, we're kind of open books. So we're happy to talk about that. But for our next segment, we have the weekly check-in. On this week's check-in, first I want to ask Shannon, how you feeling? How's this week feel to you? What's the vibe?
I think it's felt a bit like frenetic, a little scattered, manageable, but that's kind of been the underlying theme. There's a lot of things going on with work that are just kind of intense, generally speaking. So that's kind of been the overall vibe of the week so far.
Yeah. I wonder too, since your chart is ruled by Mercury with your Gemini rising, and for anybody who doesn't know about this, when you know your rising sign, the planet that rules that zodiac sign is the ruler of your chart. So Mercury rules Shannon's chart as the little Gemini rising that she is, and Mercury is still in retrograde at the time we're recording this. It goes direct on Monday the 15th. We haven't quite hit it there, so I wonder if when Mercury I wonder if when Mercury goes direct, things will feel a little bit better for you.
Yeah.
Okay, I have two questions for you that I have for every host. I want to know, where did you find joy this week and where did you find growth?
Okay, joy is easy. You already know about this. So I have a dog. I got the idea in my head. I used to love rollerblading. So I thought, what if I got some rollerblades and we could do that together? And so I got all of the things I needed, including the elbow pads and the knee pads and such. We got to do it the other day and it was a blast. It was so much fun. The weather was beautiful. It was sunset. The dog was having a great time. So I'm just very excited about that. It was definition of joy. Like we got back and I was like all stoked, like doing little rollerblade spins in the street. So that's like an easy one for joy. And then growth, I think a lot of it is related to everything that's been going on with work. There was just, there was a mistake that happened because of me and a couple other people on my team. I hate making mistakes. I like doing a very good job, but it was serious and there was recognition of that. And he was like, wow, you're handling this a lot better than you did last year. And I think that was kind of a moment for me of like, it's okay to make mistakes. Obviously don't make, especially in a professional setting, don't make a bunch of the same mistakes over and over again, but being able to like take ownership of whatever that mistake is and then recognize or like have trust in your team that, you're not going to just get fired with no notice and just having faith you'll be able to fix it. Like finding that zen was very difficult in the past for me. So, and it was still a challenge this week, don't get me wrong, but having the ability to at least action some steps and like kind of rerouting some cognitive thoughts before just completely spiraling, I think was a big moment of growth for me. So.
I love that. I love that. I think that your story about where you found joy and you used to like to do something when you were younger and doing it.
Yeah.
I just have to add a personal note. I saw photos of Shannon in her full getup with the knee pads and everything. I got such a giggle out of it. Not even in like a, oh, how silly of her kind of way, but in like I love how much you commit to things. And like you told me too, there's like logical reasons why it's important to have the pads and it makes it easier.
Totally.
And so I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah.
But like, you're just the kind of person that like, when you want to do it, like you fully do it. And I love it so much. And the fact that you just like were fully in it, like there was just like I'm doing this,
Yeah. I couldn't look back. Once I had the idea in my mind, I had to see it through. I couldn't let it go, so.
And this is more proof that I feel like the red thing is probably true. And then,
True.
And then, even your example, I think that's a great example for our topic today, just, and, and this is one of the things I'm going to talk about when we get into this, but a lot of times what, drives us away from our power, which is the things we do have control over, is because like we don't know how to tolerate when it's on us, right? And it's not because like we're bad. In fact, it's because we're afraid that it might mean that we're bad that we go away from it, when really the truth is we're not bad, right? Like how can we like navigate a situation where maybe we've done something wrong or made a mistake or whatever? How can we own that and tolerate that without it making us question our worth or our
Yeah.
goodness? You know what I
It's
mean?
hard
Because
to
that's
not
so
let it
hard.
define you, right?
Yes. Yes, it's a perfect way to say it. So I love that example. You're gonna love mine for this week. So
oh, yay. I can't wait.
okay, so where did I find joy this week? I I've created a playlist for myself that is that is music. That actually Mystic Michaela is the first one that turned me on to this. She called it spiritual trap music. So this is what I'm calling it too. And it's
this is what I heard when I was with you, right?
yes,
Okay.
yes. So and it's like this high vibe playlist, and some of the songs on it are sound like actual like normal songs, but the lyrics are very like high vibrational, like spiritually like motivated, you know, like really cool. Some of them are just like affirmations set to music, and then some of them are in between, but like that's the gist of the playlist. I love this because for me, music is a really powerful like motivator. It very quickly gets me into the kind of energy that I want to be. And in the past, when I was really depressed, actually one of the only things that would help give me energy to like actually get up and start doing things was if I played music that like really hyped me. So like music has always been a very powerful tool. And so anyway, finding this playlist where it's like helping me program really positive things into my brain while also having this like vibe that I love with. It's literally been such a piece of joy. I laugh about this because I played it for Shannon and I secretly think that you thought it was a little corny.
It was definitely a little corny. Totally. I don't know that I was hiding that. It was definitely a little corny, but the spirit of it is great, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like we actually will probably talk about that later when we talk about our pop culture thing. Like corny isn't always bad, right? Corny doesn't have to be a bad thing.
True.
You know, it achieves its purposes. I totally like. I respect it.
I love
not
it.
the corniness, yes, but not like, oh, I don't respect it because it's corny. I like it. I think it's fun.
I love that. My thing of growth is kind of related, and I'm going to use a Mystic Michaela term again because this is just something that helps me identify this part of myself. And again, for anybody listening who's not followed her stuff, I'll tell you what you need to know. You don't have to go do a whole deep dive, but if you want to, I highly recommend it. It's a great world. Welcome to it. So, my aura colors are indigo and purple, as I said in the last episode. Indigo auras are incredibly sensing of the emotional climate around them and of other people, like super emotionally psychic, right? So one of the things that happens with indigo auras is that not only are we sensing our own emotional reaction to things, but like we're sensing very intensely the emotional reactions and climates of people around us. This happens so much that we're actually coexisting with all of the emotional experience of people around us. Like it feels like it's like being shoved into our own self too. So like it doesn't always feel super separate if you've not been taught to identify them as separate. And the other thing that can happen is that it actually influences the way that the indigo aura person acts, like the things that they want to do. Like it changes those things about ourselves, if there's not awareness, to react to and respond to not only our own feedback about things, but the feedback we're getting from other people. This can be super subconscious and not something you're not aware of until, you know, maybe you've identified that, but that's something for me. So my thing of growth is I was sensing a little bit, and I didn't even realize I was doing this, but like I was sensing a little bit of that, maybe Shannon feeling it was like a little corny, right? And she's not putting out judgy vibes. Like it's not about her. This is about like a lot of other stuff, like patterns, you know, but it's presenting itself in this moment. And I'm kind of sensing that. And in the past, I might have you know, like pulled back, or it might have like curbed my own enthusiasm about the things that I'd enjoyed because I would like internalize other people's reactions to think I should be embarrassed about it, or like I shouldn't like
this
it
weird?
or something.
Should I stop?
Yeah, 100%. And so I caught myself with some of those thoughts, even like in the moment, because I just stumbled upon this and, again, it feels a little newer. And so maybe a little bit vulnerable in a certain way. And I was like, no, like I really enjoy this. So of course I'm going to do it and use it in times that feel like it matches the room, like it's not really a matter of that, but like, no, I think that this is dope, so
Mhm.
I don't need somebody else to think it's dope to give me permission to think it's dope. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yes. Yes.
And so even though it wasn't like, this huge, like, meltdown of a trigger or anything, it was just like a little bit of a, okay, like I feel like this is growth because again, more subconsciously, I might have made adjustments or it might have made me question myself, especially
Yeah.
because you're somebody that like I love and trust so much. And the people kind of more inner in my circle might have the opportunity to like impact me a little bit more. But I was like, no, like it's all good. Plus, it helps that I know you're not actually like judging me,
No,
like
not
that's
at
why we're
all.
friends, is
No.
because you're not like bringing that kind of energy into my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was my area of joy and growth
Yeah.
this week. So
But to your point, you said, it wasn't this deep trigger, but that also is a reflection of growth in and of itself, because
mhm,
maybe past versions of you, that would have been a
mhm,
deep trigger, right? So I feel like there's 2 points that you
yeah,
could reflect on of growth there. Like in the initial, that it wasn't an intense trigger, and then the follow up of not modifying your behavior
mhm,
or reading deeper into it, or,
mhm.
kind of getting wrapped up in it. So I think that's two points. Okay.
Thank you so much. I love
Yeah,
getting
you're
multiple
welcome.
points. Now for our current affairs segment. First up, I got some astrology updates for us. So, um, this is an update for the week of May 15th through like May 21st. It looks like some of the biggest things that are going on, the themes of the week, are that Neptune and Pluto are making aspects to a lot of personal planets this week. Aspects are, in case you didn't know, specific geometrical relationships. There's different ones that all have different meanings associated with them, and we call all of them like generally aspects, and we can call out like the specific ones when we're talking about like a specific aspect. But in general, there are different kinds of aspects being made to Neptune and Pluto, kind of like we talked about last week. Both Neptune and Pluto are very slow moving planets. They're very far away from Earth. So their impact is stronger kind of in that really slow moving momentum that they have. Um, let's see, probably the most significant of these aspects is going to be an opposition between Mars and Pluto. Um, that is going to be starting on Thursday, May 11th, and going for about a week. Let me break this down. Pluto, farthest planet, is the planet of transformation. Very intense planet, a lot of change involved with transformation, archetypes of like death and life are things associated with Pluto, not literally. So I'm not putting that juju out there. Um, but like of things like seasons dying or ideas dying so you can be reborn, right? Pulling things out of the closet, getting down to the truth of things so that the truth can set you free, right? These are all very like the alchemy of like really like facing your pain. Like these are all very Pluto things. Mars is a personal planet. It's closer to the Earth. It has more of an impact on our day-to-day experience. It's the planet of passion and action and war and angst and of like defending ourselves. Like it's like the fighter energy. These two planets in opposition, which is one of the strongest aspects planets can make to each other, might stir up a little bit of stuff. Might stir up a little bit of stuff for the time that they are in like close proximity to each other, which is again, I would define as like the Thursday, the 11th through the next week. Um, some things to be mindful of. Please be mindful of your temper. If you're getting angry, if you're getting defensive, or if you're like feeling this really intense desire for something that's also associated with Mars that feels a little bit more extreme than usual, like Pluto can be an extreme planet, and Mars is like a very passionate planet, kind of an impulsive planet, right? So, one way that this can manifest is that things feel just a little bit more intense, like that part of your psyche is more available to this Mars that acts things out, right? But another potential of these things being in contact is that you might be able to access more of, the things that you feel passionate about or taking like action on your transformation, right? Or attending to shadow work, like taking action, the Mars on some shadow work stuff, which is also represented by Pluto, right? So there's lots of good things that can come from this, and there's also some watch outs. So I wonder how everybody will feel reflecting on that. That's probably the biggest one that stuck out to me, because Pluto just moved into Aquarius not too long ago. It'll be at 0 degrees Aquarius. So Mars is aspecting this as it's moving from Cancer into Leo, which will probably be its own thing with Mars moving into a fire sign. But that's what we got for the astrology update. For our pop culture of the week, we got a couple fun topics. And the first one is going to be a little bit more in my field. It's as a Swiftie. Okay, Swiftie's reaction to Taylor's new man, Matty Healy. I'll start us off on this. So I'll just say for the record, I really don't know anything about Matty Healy. The first time I've ever heard of him was in relation to these things. I know he's like the lead guy for a band 1975, I think. I didn't even know the band. Sorry. I'm sure they're great, but
just gonna get ahead of that. Sorry.
I'm sorry about it. Okay. So anyway, Taylor obviously broke up with her longtime boyfriend. Who knows how long ago it was? It sounds like at least 3-4 months ago. And there have been little signs that her and Matt are interacting. They were just recently spotted out together, and the Swifties are outraged. They are like, they're not happy. But I will say that even just looking at pictures of him and like picking up intuitively, I don't get the most like warm and fuzzy vibe of this dude.
Yeah,
and I feel like that's part of what people are reacting to, is that maybe what they imagine her with is different than this guy, right? Do I think that he's a bad or evil person? Absolutely not. Does he give me like dark and twisted artist kind of vibes? 100%, you know? But I think that's interesting because she kind of has a trend of going for people who kind of have this like dark, you know, twisty kind of like element to them. And this feels like it's probably different than that because she's older and she's grown a lot, like give her credit, you know, but there's something about that vibe that it kind of seems like she likes. And to be honest, I feel like Joe had more of that than we ever saw. I feel like because he keeps himself so private, it's harder to get a read on him. And I feel like, you know, she only ever showed us what she wanted to about that relationship. But I kind of got intense, perhaps like really rigid thinking, which kind of can be a little like controlling sometimes vibes on him. Not to say that there's not a million other things that are very positive. We all have our things, right? But like I think he was a little bit more of that than we ever realized. Yeah, I'll pause there. Shannon, what do you think about it?
I am not a, you know, self-proclaimed Swiftie, but I like her. I think she's great. You know, I don't listen to all of her music, but I have no issues with her. I think she has fun music and she's done important social things, like social justice wise, right? So but I don't follow her life very closely. I am an avid Twitter user, and so this is one of those things like involuntarily I've gotten a lot of intake from. And so what I've seen, and I don't know how much of this is true, and you know, I haven't done my research to be educated on it, but it seems like he's a controversial person, maybe partially just because he's got this weird energy, but also there's some other controversies. I don't know if he's said things that are bigoted but there seems to be some angle there as well. And so what people have said that I found interesting is like, oh, well, she can't proclaim to be, you know, an activist if she dates somebody like this, which is an interesting angle. It's also to me a very harsh angle. I don't know. So I've found that to be interesting, but like, to those people's credit, maybe I'll do some research and be like, holy cow, yeah, no, there's no excuse for this, you know? So it kind of depends. I'd have to look into it a bit more myself, but I do think it's interesting how just generally as a society, and I don't think this is a bad thing necessarily, we're trending toward, if you claim to be XYZ, then you have to demonstrate that in every facet of your life. And I do think that's generally a good thing, but I do find it interesting how much it's contributing to your point, the level of outrage and intensity. It's just, I've found that to be interesting. And like I said, it could be perfectly well-deserved outrage. I don't really know enough about him. I also just found that really interesting. Just the very visceral reaction that people are getting. Talking about this is going to really motivate me to actually research, you know, what the controversial things were.
Let me know.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Our last topic is our thoughts on Top Gun. We are like years late. So we just watched the newest Top Gun movie this weekend when she was in town. It came out like years ago. Like
just
at least
last year, in our defense, 2022. We're not
okay,
doing too
it came
bad.
out last year. We've waited a whole year, even though I heard it was a great movie. I wanted to watch it. It just never happened. Worked out perfectly. Shannon was here visiting me. We're like, let's watch it. Um, so we wanted to share our thoughts on this movie. Shannon, I'm gonna let you go first, I think.
Okay. It was good. Let me just start with, speaking of, Swifties, I don't know if there's like cruisies that are going to come for me. So it was good. It was definitely good.
Mhm.
But kind of what we were speaking to earlier, there was points where it was just pretty sappy, like really corny. They really laid it on thick. And I think for people who watched that movie, have seen it a few times, know it really well, like deeply connect to it, those moments probably really struck a chord and it really resonated. But for us is kind of like almost third party outsiders. It was like we were on the outside of the inside jokes kind of, half the time. So it was so emotional, but
Mhm.
it just towed the
That's
line
very
of being
emotional.
very, very sappy. So those like there were points where I was like, I know this is supposed to be sincere, but I almost kind of want to laugh, and maybe that's my own like discomfort, maybe like deep emotions. But that was kind of my reaction to it, and I know you felt kind of similar.
Yeah, yeah, I thought it was great. Like I don't mind like an emotional movie because
Yeah.
it felt like, especially the way that they wrote the plot, like I cared.
Mhm.
It felt like the stakes
Totally.
were high. I was
Yes.
invested. And I thought that some of the actors were really, really good. Even for as
Hmm.
corny as the writing was, like I was having a visceral reaction. Like there were some characters I'm like,
Yeah.
I hate this person. I'm
They
like, oh,
delivered
they're doing
it.
a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what I observed. I think that sometimes like movies or genres that might be classic, more girl genres like rom-coms, any other movies that would be associated with like a female audience. What I have sensed is like a superiority like complex about like women's movies being cheesy or something,
Totally.
and how like guy movies are more serious, like war movies are serious, they're so serious. Like that's what like I feel
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
like how people differentiate like movies with a primary male audience versus primary female audience. I don't want to hear that stuff ever again after watching this movie. This movie was the corniest, sappiest movie of many that I've seen, right? I
Yes.
still think
Hmm.
it's a great movie. I hope that
100%.
men watch this. I want men to get in touch with their
Hmm.
feels and be able to feel like moved by something. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I was
Yes.
like, you can, like, for all of the people and men who loved this movie, never again, never
Don't want to
again.
hear it. Don't want
Don't
to
want
hear
to
it.
hear it because this movie was, I like literally like was looking over at my husband and Shannon, like, are they for real? Like, are they trying to
Yeah.
pass this off as serious? Like, or is this like a comedic moment? Like, I can't really tell, or like we would just kind of have to roll our eyes at each other because the moment was that corny.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It probably really worked for a lot of people who feel very connected to these movies. They probably
Yes.
were like, oh my goodness. But yeah, for you and I, we're like, oh, okay, is
Yeah,
this bad
even
for real? Like,
I'll even compare this to the Twilight movies. Okay, I'm just going to preface this. Of course, there's some things that are just entirely problematic about the books and everything. I get it. Those
yeah.
things that have an impact on us when we're like a teenager, like they're just
Oh yeah.
nostalgic. They kind of defy logic. Twilight books and movies are one of those things for me. Those movies are also corny. That didn't bother me as much because I was so into like the lore of the story, right? In that case was the books, and in this case maybe it was a previous movie. So again, people might have watched that and been like, I don't even have a problem with it because I'm so into it. I'm tracking, and like we
Yes.
just were in a different space. But the biggest thing that hit me was that you guys cannot claim that these more,
Totally.
male movies are not just as corny because they are.
Agreed. Agreed.
For today's channeled message, we will be talking about radical self responsibility. What is it? Why is it the key to unlocking your personal power, your personal confidence, and your personal authority? And this topic actually touches a lot of different things. So we might do other episodes that get into more parts of that, but I will try my best to like really get at the meat of this for all of us today. I'm just going to say that what we talk about and this topic might trigger some people. It might make you a little uncomfy. It might make you a little defensive. That's normal. That's human. But I'm just going to say, if you have the capacity to stick through it with us, please do, because this is good stuff and it's truly life changing. Okay, self responsibility. If we have awakened some of the spiritual awakening stuff we talked about in episode 1, we have awakened to the fact that our own patterns, our wounds, our fears, our subconscious presets are driving our life, and we kind of wake up to realize that, and we say, wait, can things be different? This concept of self-responsibility is literally what helps you do that. It is vital. You can't really do that without this. Self-responsibility is understanding and claiming that the only thing that you have power and control over is your own thoughts, your own feelings, and your own actions. It's the things inside of you. You can't control other people's actions. You can't control other people's feelings, other people in general, or like events and things happening outside of you. Can't control them. The only thing that you can control is things inside of you. Some of us might start from the place of thinking like we have no influence over our internal experience. It's not true. It's not true. And also, obviously, like we're the one making our choices and making our actions. So that's firmly in our court of control. If the ball's in our court, that's in our court. Okay, so what am I talking about? Let me get more specific with this. In any given situation, your relationship to your environment, and this means the way that you feel about your environment, what you believe about your environment, as well as how you respond, react to your environment, and then the actions that you take to interact with or even to be present in your environment are all within your control. Period. This means if you have a anxiety-filled relationship with something in your life, that's in your control. It is not a permanent state. Anxiety, fear, not a permanent state. That is within your ability to influence. If you are in environments or situations where people are freaking jerks and they're treating you very badly, your relationship to why you have told yourself that you need to stay and you can't leave, or you need to continue to interact, or you can't say no, or you can't remove yourself, that is all within your influence and control. Your decisions to continue to interact and stay present in those situations in your control. Right? When conflict arises or we fail or mistakes are made, right? A very common way of responding is like, things are happening to me. Like, why do bad things keep happening to me? Or like, this wasn't my fault. This was their fault. Why did they do this to me? Right? I'm just going to say that, of course, in any situation, somebody else probably has a part in it. They have a hand in it, right? But to focus only on their part is to completely ignore your part in it. And your part in it, attending to it, is what gives you the ability to change something happening in the future. So for you to like ignore your part in it and to really only focus and fixate on externally what's happening, disempowering, because you've given away your only opportunity to like create effective change for yourself. And that's not like what our guides and angels want for us. They want us to be able to have that freedom and that free will and that autonomy to act from a place that feels authentic. Here is what can be difficult about this concept. First of all, not connecting to our self accountability and our self responsibility is usually a generational inheritance. This is something that comes from parent to child to parent to child to parent to child. So, like, this is something that you've inherited to think about the world and yourself, and that can make that very difficult to uncover and to shift and adjust. The other thing that has to do with that is what part of what we've inherited is beliefs about our own capability, our own self-worth, our ability to enact change in our lives, and basically questioning, like, can we do it? Are we worth doing it? Are we capable of doing it? There's like some sneaky fears and wounds that have to do with those topics that are like downstream resulting in sort of disempowered mindsets. Some people might call them victim mindsets, because there's some deep self-confidence lacking. There's some deep self-trust, some self-worth stuff lacking. It's another really deep piece that comes into this. The other part that is difficult about this is that these mindsets of disempowerment are so normalized in our culture, in our society. I think that's another element that comes into this, is because we've been taught that we have to control the outside world in order to feel peace, or in order to feel what we want. Like, it's the outside world that's making us feel some way. So if we can control the outside world and its circumstances, that's how we feel a certain way. It's definitely different than how we've been taught. It's like a total shift. Our culture reinforces these ideas that it's somebody else's fault or things are happening to us, right? And that can all kind of cushion around, again, these mindsets of focusing on external things, giving up your power, and projecting outward. So these are all things that can contribute to us perhaps being in a place or starting in a place where we are not acknowledging and claiming our own hand in things. So I'm feeling guided to mention a little bit how early life experiences can contribute to maybe our response in adulthood, our reaction in adulthood to go straight to why did they do this to me? Like, this is their fault. Things are always happening to me. This fixation on the external part of how something happened and the projection, because really it's just a projection, right? Okay. First of all, like I said, this is a generational thing. So your parents experience the same thing with their parents who experience it with their parents, right? So everybody's inherited this, but the child experience versus the caregiver experience obviously is different because they're at different points in time. As an adult, we are the only ones who can give ourselves what we want. We are the only ones that can effectively care for ourselves. Like truly, we are the ones that give us what we want. That's emotionally, that's mentally, that's physically, like, and the truth of that as an adult. However, when we are children, that is the only time in our life where we actually need and are dependent on another person. This relationship with our caregivers is so foundational. It leaves this imprint on how we take care of ourselves in adulthood. I mentioned this in the first episode, I believe, like up until the age of 7, our brain, even like the frequency of the brain, the development of our brain, we're learning about ourselves in the world. From age 0 to 7, our subconscious presets are set. We operate on them for the rest of our lives until we revisit them and reprogram them as we see fit, right? So when we are young, when we literally cannot regulate our own nervous system, when we literally cannot give ourselves food and water and safety and shelter, right? As we start to get older, when we don't know how to see ourselves, how to love ourselves, when we are contingent on our caregivers, we are in a symbiotic, codependent relationship by design with our caregivers to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be loved unconditionally, to be protected, all of these things that are natural to the human experience. We have to get from our caregivers. That's just the name of the game. These caregivers who have inherited some of these mindset and tendencies and ultimately these wounds, right? They do not have the skills, the capacity, potentially even the motivation to effectively meet those needs of the kids. Sometimes, and a lot of the times, they don't even realize they're not doing that because the concept of meeting those needs is like so foreign to them, right? So, what happens for the child is in this feedback loop where they send the signal of their needs out to their caregiver. The caregiver receives them, effectively responds, and meets need of child. It's like a loop, right? The way that they showed it to me in the channeled message is like the loop is never continued. So the feedback signal sent out to the caregiver, and in some ineffective way, it's not coming back to the child. So this imprint that we get about what self-care and self-empowerment looks like is the feedback loop is always going out and it's never coming back in. Like we're not shown what it looks like to really give that back to ourselves. And this imprint that it gives us is in adulthood, we will subconsciously be seeking out situations looking for somebody to give us what our caregiver did not. Ooh, big. We will continue to subconsciously look for other people to give us what our caregivers did not. Let's just say, unfortunately, this is common. Let's just say you as a child experienced some sort of abuse. Awful. Never should have been something you should have experienced, right? Maybe your caregiver did not see what was happening. Maybe your caregiver did not effectively protect you or advocate for you. Maybe they did not defend you, right, when they should have. There might be a subconscious recreation or at the very least, getting drawn towards situations where this experience is created. You're deeply triggered, like immediately automatically responding. And there's this like cry out for somebody to do that thing your caregiver never did, defend me, advocate for me, see me, protect me, right? That feels like deeply upsetting. This is an example of how one of these wounds can play out. And you're looking for somebody externally to give you something that as a child you actually like really needed from somebody else. Like at the time that you needed it from somebody else, it was not given to you, right? Maybe this is emotional regulation and emotional processing, right? The majority of our parents in our generation and earlier were not taught the skills of emotionally processing and emotionally regulating. So as kids, when we had big feelings, like we were not taught like how to be introspective and how to bring our body back into safety. So having big feelings becomes something that we have to repress, right? Or that we have to project out, like it's almost like trying to sleuth it off of us because we don't know what to do with it, right? Or we look for somebody else to make us feel better because we don't know how to make ourselves feel better, right? Like these are examples again of how not getting needs met when it was actually the point in our life where we needed somebody to meet the need, like repeats itself and is looking externally, right? And ultimately it doesn't teach us how to meet the need for ourselves. And honestly, the concept of meeting it ourselves like doesn't occur to a lot of people. This concept that everything is truly in our control and influence. This can be a really, really hard thing to accept and swallow. It's a double-edged sword. I am going to talk about why it's the most magical, empowering thing ever, but I want to acknowledge like truly why this is so difficult, because I think that in itself can provide some of the steps that we can take to still move in that direction. One of the reasons why we would gravitate towards these reactions to the world that say, this was your fault. This thing is happening to me. There's nothing I could have done to change that. This is just the way I am. I can't change who I am. Like these kinds of like phrases and mindsets that reflect, you could call kind of like a disempowered state, or at the very least are not this radical self-responsibility. In the concept of shadow work, one of the things we have to ask ourselves when self-sabotaging behaviors come up, because yes, this mindset is a form of self-sabotage, is why is this secretly working for us? What do we secretly love about this? Like, how does this serve us? A lot of times, the reason why that is serving us to think that it's on somebody else is because we don't have confidence in our ability to enact change. Again, it comes back to those self-worth and self-confidence things. We might believe that we're not worthy of the good stuff, or that we're not competent or capable of actually taking the power back and saying, I'm going to make this what I want. Like there might be this deep belief, again, this is an early life conditioning thing, that like you can't do that. You're not capable of doing that. So this mindset of, oh, it was just their fault, there's nothing I could have done, that serves you because it allows what that conditioning tells you to be true. And our ego mind protects us from those very vulnerable feelings. So it creates this whole maze. It kind of creates this whole block, this whole guard between us and what we can do for our lives versus it just being everybody. It's on everybody else, right? It's like protecting that part of us. Another part of this is very difficult, is that when we acknowledge our accountability in things, we might have to tolerate feelings of guilt. We might have to tolerate making mistakes. If as children, we were taught that to make any sort of mistake was wrong, if we saw our caregivers react with like anxiety and intensity and like meltdowns about this, we think that it's dangerous, like actually dangerous, or we internalize it to mean something bad about ourselves if we've done something wrong, right? Especially if we're more sensitive in nature and we've hurt somebody's feelings, like tolerating our own guilt and the fact that somebody we care about is hurting because of something we did, like that is a very difficult thing to experience. And again, if we've never been taught the tools to process and regulate our body back into safety when we react to those situations, again, our ego mind's going to come in. It's going to build these walls. It's going to create these mazes. So you never have to do that because that feeling feels dangerous, right? So another piece of this that feels like it reinforces times when we are not embracing radical self-responsibility is because we can't tolerate the responsibility if things go wrong and our own part in it. Oftentimes it's like we would go straight to like a self-shaming cycle because it feels like if we acknowledge we did something wrong, it's confirmation again of these internal self wounds that maybe we're not good enough, or we're not capable enough, or we're not worthy. The angels say over and over again, these stories are not true. They are not true. Oh, you are worthy. You are capable. You are confident. It's just a matter of releasing some of these stories, doing some of that healing work, and coming back into like remembrance of how capable and how stellar you are. Right. But if we believe that that might not be the case, then like acknowledging that we did something wrong acts, it almost like in the ego mind, like acts as confirmation that we're bad. And it takes us on a deep, deep, deep dark side like spiral, you know? And I just want to say, like, that's not true. Like you can hurt somebody you love, you can make a mistake, and it does not make you bad. You can do something bad, and it does not make you bad. Period. This is going to be harder to do and to acknowledge because that requires nuance. We talked about this a little bit earlier. If you are in an activated stress nervous system state, your mind is going to have a much harder time accepting nuance. Regulate your nervous system to process these things because, yes, you can do something bad. You can feel like you're not your best self and still actually be your best self, still be good, right? And to understand this is one element to help start facing those things in addition to the nervous system regulation techniques. I'm telling you, is foundational to this healing work. Therapy, of course, especially if there's some really deep trauma or some like complex PTSD that's contributing to this. Like, let yourself get some support to like unravel these ideas that are contributing. Okay, but here's the exciting things about radical self-responsibility is you can create all of the magic in your life that you want. Let's just say you're in this awakening journey and you're looking around at your life and you're like, I don't know if this is working for me. And you say, you know what? I just want to feel more peace in my life. Like I see stress and overwhelm and everybody's upset all the time. I just want peace, you know? Okay, great. You've identified you want a peace. Let's look at how like an approach of radical self-responsibility is all that you need to give yourself peace. Not easy, but it is simple in a sense. You look at the places, let's just say it's your job. Let's say that you have a lot of anxiety about your job, and maybe you're in a job that perpetuates this sense of anxiety. There's a reason for that. That is not an accident, but that's maybe for another episode. um, you're looking at this situation and you're saying, okay, if I am the one that has the power in this situation to give myself peace, where can I give myself peace? First thing I like to reflect, I like to start inward and then kind of work my way towards some of the actional stuff, interaction with the environment, is where in this situation am I being triggered out of peace, right? Where is fear bringing me out of a sense of trust, right? Or where is my environment triggering something that sends me into chaos, right? And there's some shadow work to do there, some healing work to do there to kind of rework your beliefs about when you're really safe, right? Like you can still be safe in a situation where your boss is being weird or you've made a mistake, as Shannon has so wonderfully demonstrated to us with her example, right? Like you can learn to to show your body and yourself that you're still safe so you can feel peace, right? There's an example. Another example might be, and I guess this is a work-life balance, and really this is very similar, right? Like if you engaging with people you recognizing is a source of stress, but you keep making yourself available to people outside of work hours and you can feel your body responding and tensing up, right? Maybe it's time for you to take action about how you're interacting with your environment to create some boundaries. Like when I log off for the day, I'm closing down my computer, I'm taking the app off my phone, I'm silencing the notifications, right? Like those are all actions in my control. Now that I've created awareness for what triggers me, I'm doing my work on my trigger process. I'm trying to create more peace, but I'm also trying to help myself and not make it harder on myself, right? Like how can I change my actions to where these triggers aren't coming up as much for me in wherever area I can, right? Maybe you're in a really shitty job. Maybe you're in a job with a really toxic environment that does not believe that people can be effective if they're not anxious. There are a lot of places like this that like rely on this hustle culture and they deep rooted believe that you have to have this like anxious energy about you all the time to get anything done. So like all of a sudden you're getting questioned and judged and everybody's trying to do these things to keep everybody in that state. Like if you get to a place where you're like, no, 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 I know that I can be effective at my job and still feel like calm and grounded. Maybe that action is looking for another job, right? Like all of these actions will give you peace if you are willing to look at your own role and why you don't have peace. I'm telling you, the distance between the route between where you're currently and what you want with radical self-responsibility lays entirely inside you. It is a blessing and a curse. It's a double-sided coin. Looking at our own role in things can be so uncomfortable and it can be difficult. It can be very difficult, but the most empowering and magical thing, we claim our own authority in life when we can acknowledge how we move and how we relate to ourselves is the key between us and the life that we want, period. Okay, the last couple of things, I had some messages from the angels. They were very lovely. They were so lovely. They said that they want to help us release ourselves from these stories. They want to help us release ourselves from these mindsets. They showed it to me kind of like a veil. If like us being disempowered or even kind of like in a victim mindset is a veil, they're like, we want to help you step out of this veil. Like we really want to help you with this because this is going to help you access higher dimensions and higher frequencies to get into a mindset where you can see your own power, your own authority in your life. They're like, please ask us. We want to help you. Oh, the other thing is if you've made it this far, one of the angels, I think it might have been Holy Amethyst, says that she wants to give a blessing of courage to everybody that's listening to this because it can take so much courage to face those really painful parts of ourselves, especially if that stuff about like maybe feeling like you're not capable or you're not worthy feels like it's really the thing. It takes so much courage to engage in that healing. Oh, I'm feeling it in my heart space. There's a lot of grief. It's very difficult. So she's giving everybody listening a blessing of courage to be able to do this work because you're worth it and you can do it. You can do it. And the last two things is they say, look, you cannot be in your personal power without radical self-responsibility. It is impossible. You cannot be in your power. You cannot be in your truth without like taking full everything that it means to be responsible for your own experience, being accountable, and also the benefit of like all of this is mine. You know, the good and the bad. If you are not in that space with your life and your experience, you can't be in your personal power. You can't be in that frequency, right? Because every single piece that you give off takes away from you being in the wholeness of your power. Every time that you're like, why is this happening to me? Why did you do this to me? This is all your fault. And all of that, I need you to do this for me. I can't do this for me, whether it's a mindset or actions, right? That's like chipping and like trying to give off this wholeness that is really yours, right? Come back into your wholeness, come back into your power. That is the way to feel like that real confidence of like the solar plexus, like yellow. It's all in me. I can do this. I pulled a card. Miracles was the card. The message that came up in this one is that difficulties and miracles are not opposites. Oftentimes they're hand in hand. This feels like the difficulty and maybe the pain of attending to some of this shadow work and attending to our own part in things is not separate from the miracle that this can give us. So if you take pain and difficulty as a signal that it's not good, maybe let's like rework that because oftentimes they come hand in hand and it feels like there are literal miracles in our lives that are waiting for us when we can adopt this mindset. Is there a certain like example that you're thinking of, like a mindset that you hear people say that like maybe is more of an example of how we can shift or like, you know, a way to flip that into something that is more in line with this
Yeah,
radical
I have,
self-respect?
yeah. So the first one that comes to mind, yeah, this one's totally innocuous, but I think it's maybe easier to digest of like an example. So I play co-ed recreation league soccer a couple times a week. A lot of the people that play there are competitive soccer players. I remember there's this one team in particular who had this woman she's fantastic. She's so good. She's got incredible ball control and it's just completely aggravating playing against her. You know, you feel like you've never touched a soccer ball in your life, right? And so I remembered I was getting frustrated and I even was trying to like reframe how I was thinking about it while I was playing. This is a privilege, you know, like I'm going to get better because I'm playing against her, but it wasn't sticking. And I was like, all right, got to take myself off. I'm going to take myself off the field. And so one of my teammates was like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm just not having fun right now. Somebody else go in. So I reflected on that later, and I was like, okay, I can sit here and be mad that people are better than me. Like that's just the reality of the situation, you know? But if I really wanted to do something about it, I could, you know, wake up on Saturdays and like go do touch drills in the backyard, like with my ball. I could do
Mm-hmm.
things besides just show up on Thursdays and be mad I'm not better. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so have I done that yet? No. But now when I find myself in those situations where someone is better than me, I don't have that same, like, this is so unfair. Like we're playing against people who are so much better than us. This isn't fun. I'm like, no, there's things I could be doing. And up till now, I haven't actioned them. So that's on me. But it's easier when I'm going through those moments of like, gosh, this is frustrating. Like, well, you're getting out of it what you're putting into it.
Another way that you could approach this, if you're somebody that is in a relatable experience of this, is also the mindset. Like, can things be fun where I don't have to be better than people?
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
Like, and like you found a way to still be able to enjoy that. And I think that's important because
Just kind of
sometimes it's
surrendering
not,
to it. That's what it
yeah,
was for me.
because like
Just surrendering to the fact that they're better, and that's okay.
100%. Because
Mhm.
even like let's just say it's somebody who's better and you're like, the only way I can enjoy this is if I'm as good or better than them, right? Like that's
Right.
also kind of playing into this mindset that you have to be better in order to enjoy things, right? Like it's
Right.
like and sure, if that works for you, if that mindset of whatever the situation is that you're in, that like you want to be just as good in order to find enjoyment, like if you want to take action to play into that, by all means, like live your life,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
another step we could go into that is, wait, does that mindset work for me? What I
Right.
want is to be able to enjoy this. Does this mindset telling me that I can't enjoy this unless I'm as good as better than somebody else work for me? No. Okay, maybe it doesn't. So yes, it's a multi-pronged approach. It's like, hey, if I want to buy into this, I could do all of these things and I just
Yeah.
don't. And that's fine. It doesn't make me bad people, right?
Yes.
Also, like, where is this coming from that I feel like I have to be so like on this level about it? Like, can I
Mm-hmm.
reflect on that? Can I reprogram that? Because ultimately what I really want is just to be able to have fun, no matter if they suck or
Exactly.
they're really good. Right. So
Yes.
it
Yeah.
sounds like you've been able to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful example.
Because that's a big part of it. It was like in me going through that thought exercise and like putting the ball out in the backyard, it also kind of helped me recognize the absurdity of the situation, right? Like, am I actually really going to spend an hour of my weekend, of my free time every weekend doing this just so I can be better? And obviously I like did a quick, return on investment and thought, no, I'm not going to do that.
It doesn't make sense. That's not what I want.
And it made it easier, right? Like going to
Yeah.
those games later and just not being as good. It made it more fun, being like, okay, of course I don't care that much actually, now that I'm
It gave you
actually thinking
clarity,
about what this would require.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love
Yeah.
that. All right, for our last segment today, we have Ask Bre. Thank you for everyone for submitting your questions to this. We have 3 questions. We're going to give our 2 cents on the questions, and I'm also going to pull some cards. So Shannon, will you give us question 1?
Yes. Okay. I'm excited for these. So question 1, will my boyfriend and I get engaged this year? I've been told by psychics it will be happening soon, but we recently had some financial issues and I think it may have pushed us off track. What are your thoughts?
I love this question. First of all, I think it's relatable in like relationships, especially long-term relationships that like push and pull in the relationship sometimes around like the next step in getting engaged. I just think is like something like a lot of people experience in different versions. The only other thing that I will say about this, and I'm going to pull a card about if like we'll see what the guides say about if it will happen this year. The only other thing that I will say, and again, this is not necessarily to this person because I don't think that she's anxious about it.
Probably
Like
just
she's
more curious.
yes, she's
Yeah.
calm but
Yeah.
curious. I
Yeah.
know a lot of people who get in this situation and like feel upset about the fact that it's not happened yet. So this advice is going to be just across the board. I think that communication, vulnerability, and transparency in relationships is vital, especially if you're considering marriage, especially because it's a slightly different kind of relationship. And the different areas of your life that you're going to be interacting on require really transparent, vulnerable, and honest communication if you're going to be in true partnership in those areas of your life. So let's start with talking about engagements. Like, let's start that process if you've not already, right? I think it's really important to have a conversation with your partner about the next steps and about engagement. Of course, this also means about marriage, right? But if, let's just say you've talked about marriage, you guys feel like you're aligned on your different values. If you talked about, you feel aligned, you feel like you guys would make good partners to each other in that. Talking about the engagement specifically, sometimes I think it's really important, especially because women often take the role of like wanting this to happen when the men feel like maybe more ambivalent about it.
Mhm.
Being able to come to your partner and just be really honest and vulnerable. Like, this is why this is important to me. Like, it's more than just I want a pretty ring or like I want to be able to tell people we're engaged. Like, on an emotional level, what this means to me is A, B, and C, right? Like, on maybe a more practical level, like I am thinking really seriously about this stage and this stage in our life, right? And the reality, maybe it's having kids. The reality is that like me having kids is really important to me. And we're coming up close on this time. We've talked about
Yeah.
wanting to do all these things before we have kids. So, like, I feel actual anxiety because of how important these things are. And I understand you might not feel that the same way that I do, right? Like,
Right.
physiologically, right? So, whatever that is for you, like being able to sit down and have a really vulnerable conversation that's not pressuring them. It's not about trying to
Yes.
convince them, but it's just you being honest about why this is important to you. So there can be understanding, right? And then flipping that back to them, like, what do you think about that? Like, what are your honest feelings about getting engaged, about getting married? Like, why might you be in a different place? Are you in the same place? Like, that conversation is so important. I feel like that can ease if there is anxiety or resentment, which again, I don't think that this question asker specifically is feeling, but if you're in a
Sure.
situation where you are feeling anxious and upset about your boyfriend not proposing to you, please consider that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what you spoke to, and this is not at all, like a criticism of the listener. I've spoken to psychics. She says, I think it may have pushed us off track. Like, these are things you can get answers to by having a simple conversation. Now, I also recognize part of this angle might be wanting to be surprised and like maybe not wanting to have too much information, especially if you were initially thinking it was for sure happening on a certain timeline. And then I guess at that point, you have to decide what's more important to you, right? Is it the element of surprise? Is that more important to you? Then you kind of have to, again, surrender to like, okay, maybe it's going to take longer than I want. Or if you have, physiological reasons you need to speed up your timeline or, financial whatever, right? That it actually, this is more important, then like you kind of have to let go of maybe getting to be surprised. And you do have to be vulnerable and open up and be like, hey, I know we're having some financial problems, or maybe not problems, just some things have happened. Our financials aren't in the same position that they were before. I would love to open up a dialogue about this. So it's just kind of, it's up to you. What is that trade-off? Because you again, you do have the power, right? Back to the self-responsibility. You have the power to find out the information you need to. You just have to decide what's more important to you. Because I could totally understand just really wanting to be surprised. Like, I totally get that. So it just sort of,
and even like
that's kind of what it,
Yeah. And even the degree of the surprise, because I know like when I was talking to my then boyfriend, now husband about it, I was like, I don't want to know the specific date. I don't want to know how you're going to do it. Like that part, leave me in the dark. But just in general, is this something you're gearing up for? Do you have a plan? Like,
are we trending in the same direction?
Yes. Yes. Are you feeling the same sense of urgency as I am? Like, that's what I wanted to know. Right. That was not something I wanted to feel mystery about. I felt like there was so much important, like, dialogue to happen about where are you and where are you coming from and where am I and where am I coming from about this, and are we aligned, right? So like that was my personal take, but again, everybody like do what floats your boat, but just consider this part of it. So for today's card pulls, I'm going to use Aliza Kelly's There Are No Coincidences deck. All right, so today's card for the first question. Interesting. The card pull for the first question, we got numbers and silence. Numbers is really interesting because numbers also has to do with time. And of course, the question was literally asking about the timeline in which this will happen. Time, all numbers, like just regular numbers, math, geometry, time, numbers are the language of the universe. It's a very like actually esoteric kind of thing, but we use it practically. Our relationship with these numbers, with the concept of time, with like measuring things, is actually quite an intuitive one. This card calls you to look inwardly about your relationship with these different measurements. Both of these are a call back into your own intuition, like your own knowing about what's coming. This could also mean maybe there's like a significant date or something coming up, because dates are also in numbers. Silence card is like, get still in with yourself and you will find the answer. Sometimes you got to like quiet down to be able to hear it. And that's what this silence card is. I'll just say intuitively, I kind of get the feeling that it's still going to happen soon. Part of me kind of feels like it could be the end of this year or maybe the beginning of next year. Feels like there might be a couple timelines. And when I was tuning into this question the other day, I kind of felt like um, he had already made the plan about getting engaged. Maybe I'd already bought the ring before these financial things happened. So it doesn't like change too much. But please consider what we said about maybe having a conversation just so you feel like you can be on the same page. Shannon, give us question 2.
Okay, question 2. My spiritual growth seems stunted by the daily demands of my life. I love my life, but my mind feels cluttered and spirit feels dull. I need help creating the joy bubble Mystic Michaela talks about for people with pink auras.
Ah, I love this question. I have a few like specific things to think about and recommendations. First of all, it's very interesting that you use the words cluttered and dull. I honestly, and this is not a judgment, like, is the space that you live in cluttered and dulled?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times our physical space, like our home, not only is a reflection, but also like feedback loop, like comes back and influences us. Is it your car? Is it your office? Is it the home? Is it your room? Right. And look, no judgment, because sometimes like I'm a little bit more prone to like depressed seasons. Like it's hard for me to get up and like do the deep cleaning, but like energetically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
having your spaces around you invoke the way that you want to feel is really important. Can you bring more bright colors that like bring in happiness? That's the first thing that I feel called to say. There's also like a certain like amount of self stewarded, like the being the steward of your own energy and of your own mind, right? Like what can you clear out? Like if things are feeling cluttered, that is like maybe your own spirit signal to you that there are things taking up space in your mind that should not be taking up space in your mind. Can you do a self inventory? What's causing me stress? What's filling my bucket? What's taking away from my bucket? And again, in the self empowered state, like where can I start taking actions to remove and release things that are taking up space that are not giving me what I want? Where are the things that do bring me joy, that do bring me lightness and inspiration and connection? Am I doing them? Can I spend more time doing them? You know what I mean? Like do that kind of like steward element of your own insides to see what's going on. Because again, the words of this make me think that that you might think that your life is good, but if you're experiencing these feelings, your spirit, your soul is telling you something's not good, right? Like look a little closer here. There could be
Yeah.
some adjustments that are made. The last thing I want to say, and that brings up to what Shannon said at the beginning of the episode, something I used to love to do when I was younger, and I just unashamedly went for it, right? I think this is the key to starting some inner child work and to creating joy. Like the things that we just loved to do when we were younger, like were some of the most like pure expressions of joy. We often get conditioned not to do that because we've been taught to be embarrassed about that. We've been taught that like to be so like free, like we should be ashamed or embarrassed or like that's not what adults do or that's silly or I'll be judged, right? Like all of these things are told to us that we have to like put that down. So there definitely is some shadow work involved with like addressing the fears about being judged or you internalizing shame about things that there's no reason to feel shame about. Like
Mm-hmm.
do the rollerblades, like get the
Yeah.
pink thing that's usually for kids or something, like
Yes.
if
Yeah.
you love dancing in the park with ribbons or like butterfly like do the thing, like you're not hurting anybody. If you
Mm-hmm.
feel so happy doing it, like do it. you know
Mm-hmm.
maybe you got to do it by yourself first. That's okay, like in the safety of your own home, like, ooh, I'm gonna do this, like, I'm not going to draw again, or I'm going to do coloring books, like whatever it is, like connect with the things that you thought were really fun but maybe you were told or taught to be embarrassed, or you just didn't need them, or you like just play around, play, play. And you will find a lot of times I feel like those bring us into deeper connection with ourselves. Like we come back into like deep contact with our soul and our spirit. That's where joy leads us, is back into ourself. And I feel like it's going to brighten your spirit, your energy. It's going to fill you up. It's going to bring more like lightness into your life.
Yeah, I completely agree. The description is very visual, which I think you make a great point. it doesn't even mean that your space or your car or your desktop or whatever has to be spotless, right? But are there little things you can do just day by day, just like the little things you can do? Because to your point, I personally am a very neat person, but sometimes life completely gets in the way, and it is like a continual feedback loop, right? So I get busy, I get stressed, I don't stay on top of cleaning, I walk in the front door, I see a messy house, I get even more stressed, and it builds and it snowballs, right? So I think there's so much value in that. And again, even mentally, like, what is cluttering your mind? Does this mean we have to maybe create some space for something joyful, right? Whatever fun thing, is it ribbons in the park or whatever?
Yeah.
And then maybe, like you said, taking stock, a sit back and reflection moment is kind of needed to figure out what is serving me, what's feeling right, what's feeling great. And then maybe what's actually kind of inhibiting me from feeling sparkly and pink, right? Like,
Yeah.
kind of like taking a step back and realizing what those are in order to maybe action it, just little baby steps, right?
Yeah.
Little steps at a time to get it done, so it doesn't feel too overwhelming.
Yeah. And the only last thing I'll say to build on that is attending to your spaces. It doesn't even necessarily have to be about neatness. Neatness is important.
Right.
It is a signal to yourself and the universe that you like value. It's a certain signal. There's something more in that, right? It doesn't mean you have to be like a neat freak in order to like signal that you like or feel yourself worthy, but there is something to that. But even more than that, the intention of how you keep your space is important, right? So and again, this will require you understanding what's important to you and like what sparks joy, right? Like if you having a bright pop of color anywhere that you look because you like that, or if there's a certain animal or symbol or something that feels like it's just you, like you intentionally placing that in your space is creating this whole experience. So that's intention.
Totally.
100%.
Totally.
All right. So for question 2 from Elise Kelly's Tank deck, we have the card Uranus, which is the planet of Uranus. I love this card for this question. The first wisdom that Uranus has for us is getting perspective, like take a step back, take another step back, like keep trying to get distance from it to see it differently, which I think is really interesting given a lot of me and Shannon's responses to this were like to reflect a little bit, get a little distance from it, like from being like in it, and see if new ideas or new brainwaves, realizations will come to you when you get this perspective. The other part of Uranus is that Uranus is not afraid to go against the tide. It's not afraid to go against the status quo and be a little weird or be a little out there, or like challenge things, be a little rebellious, right? Like individuality is absolutely a beautiful theme of Uranus. So the other thing we were talking about, and doing things that feel good for you, maybe things you loved to do when you were younger before we were conditioned to like, feel embarrassed about things, like claim those. Like it's okay to be a little out there, a little eccentric, especially if that's going to bring you joy. And Uranus feels like it's absolutely encouraging that. All right, Shannon, go ahead and give us question 3.
Okay, question 3. If you know that a certain situation is no longer serving you, what are good mindset tools or suggestions to navigate that until it feels like the right time to move on? Example, with friendships. We don't click like we used to, or I feel trained, but I don't want to create drama to remove them. I'm learning to set boundaries and create more healthy friendships, but trying to navigate a friendship that feels like I've outgrown wears on me.
Shannon, what do you think?
This one's a hard one. Friendships, we kind of spoke to this. Friendships change so much over time, right? They develop, they shift. And something that I've always found, this is for me personally, I realized over the years my expectations of a romantic relationship and what were a friendship were completely different. I was giving people in my life who were friends way more free reign to treat me maybe not as great. So these are always hard, I think, because the way we approach friendships is almost like there's a lot more grace, I think, that we give, which in a lot of ways is good. I think you're on the right track. I think there needs to be, it depends. Are you for sure decided this person is done? Or is it just, it's uncomfortable setting these boundaries, I'm still trying to figure it out? So depending on which situation you're in, my answer would vary a little bit. But if we're still trying to give it a good faith effort, keep it so uncomfortable, but keep doing it. Find little low stakes issues that come up that, if it does go a little sideways, it's not a big deal, and use that as a practice round for when that bigger thing that is really draining your friendship comes up, because then you've built up the muscle. Right now you have the muscle of setting that boundary. Something without big consequences. That would be my recommendation there. If it is like, no, I've decided, I've taken stock, this is not it anymore. It's uncomfortable, but I think basically what's happening is you're prioritizing their comfort over your own at this point. Like their comfort of getting to maintain a friendship with you versus your comfort of being in that friendship. And so I think, Bre, you were the one who, I'm gonna butcher it, but it's something about like, it's the highest form of self-denial. What is it? When when you are letting other people dictate your level of comfort. So I think if you're kind of at that point where the only reason you're maintaining this friendship is because you don't want to hurt their feelings, that's also a disservice to them because it is one-sided. It's not honest, right? Like you're not showing up for, like, neither of you deserve it. So if that's something you haven't considered, it's dishonest for both of you, and you don't have to be living a dishonest life, and you wouldn't want that for them either. Like if you're in a different friendship and your friend feels like they're over you, you would probably feel bad and not really want to be, pushing yourself on them. 100%. So I think maybe just consider that angle and don't feel pressured to maintain something that's not benefiting either of you, right? So
yeah, I love that. Thank you to Shannon for her contribution to these questions. She had to jump. I will give my thoughts on the third question. I think everything Shannon said, honestly, is right on point. It depends where you are on the spectrum. So is the draining part that you're trying to be in this relationship in a new way? And are you kind of waiting to see how it plays out with them, to see if there is a way that the relationship can still bring you joy or bring you support or feel good? Because, I mean, the relationships on some level should be bringing something positive, right? Are you still kind of waiting to see, like, if it brings you joy as you're enacting these new boundaries? Are you feeling called towards giving it a little bit more time? Or do you know in your heart of hearts that this isn't right? I think our intuition is the best guide for our path. So if there really is some element of your intuition saying, not quite yet, honor your intuition. But if it's your ego saying, oh, I don't know if I want to do that yet, like the drama, the discomfort, like, I don't know if I want to, like, let's observe that. We don't have to judge ourselves. It doesn't even mean we have to like action it right away, but let's at least observe that information and just dig a little deeper. Because like Shannon said, is this being based on this idea that causing drama is more of a, like, avoiding drama is more of a priority than you creating space and happiness in your life? Is their comfort or is their peace of mind or not upsetting them in your mind? Like, are you not even realizing that you find that more important than what you want? What you want being maybe more space for a different kind of friendship or less interaction. Like, that's what your intuition is telling you, but not taking action on that because you think it's more important to avoid drama or to not hurt their feelings. Like, that is sending a certain kind of signal. That's just the reality of it. Again, you can take some time to like act on that when you feel ready, when you feel like you've done enough self-work to like do that in a way that feels safe to you. And don't judge yourself, but like, let's observe that. That's an important lesson for all of us, right? Because all of these signals that we're putting off are, again, they're showing where we're at with our own self empowerment, with our own self journey, and the world's just going to keep reflecting that back to us. Nothing's really going to change until we start to change. All right, for the last question here about, interesting. The last question about how do we know when we're ready to move on, specifically with friendships, we have the memories card. All right, when the memories card comes up, it is signaling that there are past experiences that are impacting how we're showing up in this current moment, maybe even a little bit more than we realize. So it invites us to reflect on, like, what memories, what past experiences, when have we been in a similar situation? How did that go? What did that tell us about the world and about how we should be? And is that influencing how I'm interacting in this present moment more than what the present moment's actually telling me to do, right? And when we can be really aware, really conscious of how memories and past experiences are educating our actions, we can choose whether or not, like, that past experience drives or informs or sets the action in the moment. And we can choose our path forward, right? Like, our future does not have to be a repetition of the past. So Something about memories and past experiences is being guided for you to reflect on. All right, that is episode 2 of Breakthroughs with Bre. You can follow along with me on my social media at Healing with Bre, which is BRE on Instagram. I'm at Healing with Bre on TikTok too, but with like a dot between each word, period between each word. If you would like to submit a question for Ask Bre, please submit your questions. Please email it to me at breakthroughswithbre@healingwithbre.net. You can also DM me on either TikTok or Instagram. Just keep in mind that asking questions to me for this segment is a little bit different than just asking the cards. I do tarot pulls on my Instagram stories. If you didn't know, go follow me there and get an individual pull. It's a little bit different. When you ask a question to the cards, you personally have to be specific about what it is that you want, but I don't need the context because your guides know, the cards know, it's fine. For this segment, because I am giving my 2 cents, having a little bit of context about what exactly you want some like advice or 2 cents on is helpful. So give me a little bit of context for something to work with. And then of course I will be pulling a card for you too. If you do want to work with me, I do one-on-one sessions virtually for Akashic Records channeling, astrology, aka birth chart consultations, and energy healing, as well as combinations of those that you can read about, see about on my website, healingwithbre.net, and you can book there. I'm so grateful that you were all here today. I can't wait to see all the breakthroughs that we will continue to have together. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next Monday.